Good afternoon. This is Scott Churchson, Obie Schottenfeld, and Mr. John DeRosa for Spanglish Sports Den Sports World. And welcome to Spanglish Sports World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Kindly remember to download the Zingo TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android devices. When you download, make sure to rate, leave a comment. Both apps are free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Get it today. How you doing, gentlemen? Another Tuesday, another sports den.
Oh, I'm doing great. I just want to point out that John and I have luscious facial hair, and you're not pumping it out.
I had to actually shave this for an audition for something else that required me to be a security guard for a show on Stars that I can't talk about that 50 Cent is involved in. I can't mention anything beyond that. So, but in this case, they don't usually take kindly to security guards with facial hair. So, anyway, we're here for the sports den. We got a bunch of stuff we're going to be covering today. Speaking of covering, John had to cover the camera for a split second there as well. But we are going to be covering Major League Baseball's midseason review, midseason report card, maybe a little bit of talk when it comes to the home run derby last night, which is admittedly a little lackluster, I think. My opinion only. NBA Finals, maybe a little bit of Tour de France, the Tour de Force that is the Tour de France. And also a little soccer if we got the time, and of course these fewer sports. So John, let me start off with you, Mr. Walker. How you doing, sir?
Doing pretty fun. I'm pretty good. How are you today?
Pretty darn well. And any other words may be used there. So how about Obes? How about you?
I'm great. I have a lot of thoughts on that home run derby. I mean, you and I had a whole Twitter conversation on just part of the stream of thought that can go on with that derby. So yeah, looking forward to that conversation today. And yeah, let's get these midseason grades in. I know John and I are Mets fans, so we got high grades.
Well, for the Mets, I absolutely don't disagree. All right, so we'll start in the NL East. You know what? We'll start there. Do you want to just basically, here's what I'm going to think. Obie, if you want to run through all five teams, John, then I'll do the same. Quick thoughts, things like that, and then we'll just bounce between the divisions in this case.
I'm not going to speak on all five teams. That's a little much for me, but we'll start with the Mets, who, although they have the worst record of any division leader right now. They are leading the division. They're winning games that DeGrom starts now, and they're winning games that everyone else starts. No one else is really good in the division. Phillies are going to probably waste Zach Wheeler, who would probably be the Cy Young if it wasn't for DeGrom. And then the Braves just, Ronald Acuna Jr. was having a season.
Yeah.
Just a season. So, I mean, I'm sad to see him go. Just one of the, he's just somebody who's lost for the year, and there's not much we can do about it, but he really was playing some of the best ball we've seen. The Marlins and the Nationals, they play baseball. There's nothing wrong with them. But
they definitely are a team.
They're definitely teams, but they're not, we didn't think they were going to be in the discussion. And at this point, they've proven that is the correct assumption we made at the beginning of the season.
Let me just say this. I really personally was kind of hoping that the Marlins would not extend Mattingly's contract. The man's 60 years old. Let him out. Let him get a chance to be a winner. When Joe Torre went to the World Series in 96 for the first time, he was 56. So he was 4 years younger than Don Mattingly is now. But,
he's
John?
also won at least 3 times as many games as Mattingly has as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
Are the Marlins Mattingly's second or third stop? Because usually after a third chance, you usually don't get a fourth.
Sure.
Absent any
unless you're like Dusty Baker, and then you get 12. But yeah, no, he had the Dodgers first because he took over for Joe Torre when Joe Torre was over there for a couple of years. And then they let him go. They went to the World Series, and then he went to the Marlins. And
Girardi is the only Marlins manager that I can think of off the top of my head. Freddie Gonzalez, because usually the Marlins are kind of a career graveyard when it comes to managers. Yeah. Not very many of them through their history have had jobs after being manager of the Marlins. But I believe Freddie Gonzalez with the Braves and Joe Girardi, with the Yankees, are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head. who actually got jobs after being the Marlins.
Well, Leland, he took the team to the World Series, I think, in '97. And then, of course, they just dismantled the team after that in the '98 meltdown. I was going to say, who else was there? Tony Pena down there? But a lot of them, it's one of those things that I think because the team doesn't generate success, it hurts the resume. The only thing that in this case that I think saved Joe Girardi right after being fired was the fact that he was manager of the year.
And he was only there for 1 year, and everybody knew that he was that it was a hose job that he was fired the way that he was after one season, where he won manager of the year.
But it's like I said, when it comes down to it, I want to see Don Mattingly get to a World Series. I've been down that road. I've beaten that horse several times at this point. So to me, it's kind of like, let him go. Anyway, you got your grades in this case. Do you want to do them, or you want me to?
For the NL East, sort of piggybacking off Obie, this reminds me a lot of the 2015 season, where the Mets, they're not even at full strength mostly as far as their everyday lineup goes. But they're still winning the division because it's a down year in the division. They're doing what they're supposed to do, which is to beat up on the subpar teams underneath them for the most part. But which for the Mets, they don't usually do that in a lot of years. So that's a welcome change for this. The most disappointing team in the division easily is the Braves, coming off an NLCS appearance where they're, where for them to go down as far as they have has been a bit of a surprise for me.
I don't know. To me, I think the entire division is a disappointment.
Yeah. I mean, I expected them to be, going into the season, I expected the Mets and Braves to be neck and neck at the top. But I don't think anybody's been within 3 games of the Mets since April. You have the Mets at the top, the Marlins at the bottom, and then the middle 3 are kind of interchangeable.
But the problem, here's what I want to say. I might disagree with you a little bit on this. I mean, yes, the Braves, I think so. But to me, I think the Phillies are the more disappointing team to me personally, because I have a vested interest in how Joe Girardi and Didi and Ronald Torreyes are, obviously from Yankee time. But also, you mentioned before, Obie, Zach Wheeler being wasted. Zach Wheeler right now is the only player in baseball right now as a pitcher that's above 115 innings pitched on the season. He's at 119. He's on track for 220, which is a far cry from what it used to be 10, 20 years ago. But for me, that team there, with Bryce Harper, that is the bigger disappointment to me because there's so much payroll and so much expectation that team should be better. The Braves have always found a way to kind of be that scrappy little team no matter what happened. So for me, the Phillies are the more disappointing team, although I completely concede the point of why the Braves are for a lot of you guys. So also runner-up to me, also the Nationals, because you're paying Scherzer $35 million and Corbin $24 million, and that team is a near last place team.
With the Phillies, I guess I didn't really see the Phillies as much of a disappointment because I've already accepted that everywhere Bryce Harper goes, that he's just one of those players that he's not a winner. He's only in it for the money for himself. It speaks volumes for the fact that the Nationals came together after he left. He's basically a generation's A-Rod, where teams get better after he leaves, and it's yes, a lot of it is because of the contract, but when you're making $300 million, you kind of get that criticism.
Yeah, and it'd be difficult to live up to that kind of hype. But again, the payroll part of it is such a bottleneck. You're going to see that with the Yankees in a couple of years.
Yeah, the payroll in baseball, I don't want to hear it. If you want to pay a guy, pay a guy. Look, I know that this entire season, I don't know how I just got took off on payroll, but the entire season, Scott has been one of the many who's been like, hey, Dusty Baker, suck it up. I love you, but you picked up this team of cheaters. But I think, honestly, I think the worst thing Houston did to Major League Baseball was not cheat to win a World Series. It was underpay players and make more money than anybody else did while losing. Like that's probably a worse sin than they made. So pay guys, shut up and pay them, or put in a salary cap. So, and then when you pay a guy, then you're talking, well, he's taking up too much of the cap, and that's a real issue. I don't think Harper is half the player A-Rod is either, by the way.
Agreed.
I think you're complimenting him by calling him this generation's A-Rod because, look, A-Rod took the criticism to heart and then started cheating and then got yelled at for cheating by the same people who were criticizing him for not playing good enough. So,
and he had a couple MVPs in there, too.
Yeah. So, but I just never bought into the Phillies. I don't know why. Especially when you're local, as I am, you hear the hype and you start to buy it. And, if they're not your team, you get nervous. I just never believed in them. Probably because I don't believe in Wheeler. Now, Wheeler's making me look like an idiot right now, but the rest of the team is taking up the slack. So, and I don't think Atlanta is that much of a disappointment because I would still say they would have had a chance except for what just happened to Acuna. So, the Mets are the disappointment. They're just less disappointing to the point where they're winning. And maybe Lindor will play well in the second half. Who knows? So, what the Mets have going for them is that when they do make the playoffs, every third day they're going to throw DeGrom out there and let him throw for 7 innings and see, end his career and try to win a World Series. That's pretty much the gamble I expect them to make.
Funny thing about DeGrom, of all of Major League Baseball with at least 30 at bats, he is 4th in baseball right now with a 364 average. He has a higher offensive WAR than Dom Smith does.
I think how offensively challenged a lot of the game is when it comes to batting average. That is quite the feat.
And at one point, I think after his last start, when he gave up that home run to the silencing shock of the Citi Field crowd, he had given up less earned runs than he had RBIs. So, yeah, he's having a great season. Did I talk about my dream? Was it on our show last week where I talked about how I really would have loved to see this year's All-Star game? I guess not.
No, I don't think so. Because we had Lawrence on, so we're doing a lot of F1 stuff.
So my All-Star game, my dream for the All-Star game would have been Ohtani and Tatis versus DeGrom and Guerrero, and just make that the All-Star game. And then let everybody else run the bases and just watch those guys pitch and pound baseballs, and it would have been fantastic. Instead, we have a real game as opposed to some bizarre exhibition. But, all joking aside.
I'm going to get shot for what I'm going to say here.
Calling an All-Star game a real game is quite the stretch for any league.
Hey, yes, in 2003, it's like, this time it counts. Because they had to make it determine who had home field advantage in the World Series after the tie the previous year.
Right.
My thing, here's what you mentioned Ohtani. I'm going to get shot for what I'm going to say. I'm going to get lynched. But Ohtani, to me, I wonder if he's going to flare himself out in a couple of years. He has injury history. Being able to do as much as versatile as he is and as great a draw as he is, and I'm not denying the talent, I wonder if he's going to basically kind of disappear from baseball in about 5 years, doing so much that he's going to get injured somehow.
I could see him being like a Matt Harvey type in that regard, where he burns bright for a few years and then just with injuries, he just flames out quickly.
I think he's wasted right now over in LA though.
So
for sure,
baseball has a history of wasting its best players. You can go down the list, and until analytics came around, the writers were smart. They used to be like, no, you can't be the best player. You can't be the MVP. Your team didn't win. Like that was a good tool for baseball so that people didn't feel the fact that they were missing the best players in the playoffs, because you can just go every 3 years. I'm sure you can go argue for a guy is the best player in baseball who wasn't on a playoff team. And that includes the last 10, Mr. Trout. So wasted or not, will he get injured? I don't know. Look, specialization arises in everything all the time, and it makes teams better. And here's Ohtani doing exactly the opposite, going, I refuse to specialize. Likely, my guess is he at some point or another needs Tommy John and then only hits. That is my guess. Just because,
considering he already had Tommy John once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no. At some point, it's got to be like, and his swing is unreal. Like, he swings like a golf, like, so many times they say, oh, hitting a baseball and hitting a golf ball are different. But he swings like it's a golf club. He keeps his arms back for so long to get maximum torque out of his upper body. It's unbelievable the way he swings.
Here's what I'm going to say. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I'm going to now go to your points about the home run derby. You didn't get to enjoy his swing and watch the home run because it was like, boom, boom, boom. I'm like, I want to admire the swing. I want to see a replay. I hated it.
Thank you. I hated that split screen. I was talking, last night. I hated the split screen. I see why they did it, and I understand it, and I don't blame them for it. But I was not big on that because you're watching one go while the swing is happening for the next one, or you watch this swing and you miss the home run on the last one. There's no real way to be able to just catch it all, so to speak.
You couldn't admire it.
Yeah,
like you couldn't admire it.
I don't blame ESPN for trying that though.
I think they did that a year or two ago also. Like, I think a year or two ago must have also been – I honestly don't remember the last time I watched the home run derby. I was just excited to go watch Ohtani. And I'm like, what is this? I can't really watch because the ball – I was like, they're hitting it 520 feet, but you can't see it because you got to go back to watching the swing as opposed to watching the ball.
Yep. I think him getting bounced in the first round, though, even though it took longer, was probably the best thing for his career. Because you saw how tired he was after one round. And if he had two more rounds of that, I think it would have done damage the same way as it did to Pete Alonso and also Aaron Judge. So him being bounced might do him some good long-term. Go ahead.
A lot of players, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know there have been multiple times over the years where if a player advances deep into the home run derby or wins it, usually they have a noticeable drop-off in performance the second half of the season after that. Other ones that come to mind, Todd Frazier and Josh Hamilton. Yeah. It almost killed, Josh Hamilton's career was never the same after that home run derby in Old Yankee Stadium.
So, Scott, this was the second side conversation Scott and I had. So, it's a myth. This idea of going into the home run derby hurts your career. What they have actually found is that if you take it's going to the All-Star game that hurts you. If you look at the drop off of all All-Stars versus the guys who are in the home run derby, all the All-Stars have a larger drop off in comparison on average than the guys in the home run derby. And the reason that is the guys who are in the All-Star game are guys who are having amazing seasons for the most part. So you would expect them to have lower numbers. Plus, sometimes they talk about counting stats, and it's 92 games versus 72 games, not 80 versus 80. So there's all that. But it was an interesting article where that's really a myth, and it's kind of like the myth of the Madden cover.
You said that last night.
Of course you come down after the Madden cover. You just had your career year. You're not going to be as good.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a difference between there's those that come down a little bit, and there's those that just completely fall off a cliff. Yes, there's a bit of a performance dip after a career year is to be expected. I mean, and as I said, I hadn't looked at the stats, so I believe you when it comes to it being a myth. But like there's also the ones that flamed out so badly got most of the attention. Like Aaron Judge. Has Aaron Judge even finished a full season healthy since that home run derby?
Nope. And that's part of the problem with having somebody that big too.
Yeah. Did Aaron Judge ever fit? I honestly don't know. I feel like Aaron Judge has never played 162 games.
His rookie year, he was
that one season. His rookie season where he set the record, I think, was the only full season he played.
Yeah, and 2017 was that year. But after that, it started to taper off because the man's 282 pounds and playing right field. That's going to take its toll on the knees, the hips, the ankles, the whole lower body.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's just Aaron Judge's build. And, it's baseball is so cherishing the home runs. There are going to come guys who are going to come through and they're going to stay healthy. Mm-hmm. those guys are going to come through because they're going to start building that younger ages. This is what they want to do, and it's how they're going to hit the ball. But it's going to be wild. I mean, is just like with Ohtani, forget everything else. Just the way he torques his body. Mm-hmm. DeChambeau in golf, the way he torques his body, and Tiger. I mean, he's younger than Phil, but Phil's still playing now. Tiger had a car accident, but still, Tiger got hurt earlier because of the amount of torque he was putting on his body, which was something nobody was doing before, and nobody really knows how to recover from that. So, yeah, I mean, torquing your body like that in any sport, we see that.
Tim Lincecum is another one that comes to mind, where he had such a strange windup where even watching him, it was amazing that he was able to keep it up as long as he did, before breaking down. Because I remember watching him earlier in his career, and I said, this guy will be done within 2 or 3 years with a crazy windup like that. But he ended up hanging around for much longer.
Landed, I think, $121 million deal, was it?
Something like that.
Was that Barry Zito? I forget which, but
I think it's Zito numbers. But Lincecum had a big contract too, but I don't recall the numbers off the top of my head. $121 million. That sounds like the Barry Zito contract.
That was probably All right. So basically, we're 20 minutes into the show at this point. We've gotten through one division. You can always find us actually on Facebook and also on Instagram at Spanglish World Sports Den, and also on Twitter at SSW Sports Den. For me, Obie, and John DeRosa. Do you guys want to continue with baseball, or you want to move on to something else?
Well, I don't mind continuing with baseball because I still think there's 1 or 2 things we haven't touched on. I don't know if the let's go by division was the best plan, because that's where I think we got sidetracked from. I'd still like to talk. I mean, if there's a division we want to talk about, it's the NL West, right? I mean,
I do.
Everybody
NL
knew
West
that.
and AL East and NL West are the big two. And then also a mention to the Houston Astros, by the way. I do want to mention something in that arena too, but we'll start with the NL West. How about that, sir?
Okay. I mean, the Giants are up by 2 games. What? I mean, baseball was supposed to be this season was all about the Dodgers and the Padres, and those 2 teams were putting on a show, but nobody knew that the hot younger sibling was going to show up and have finally blossomed in the Giants, which has just been spectacular for baseball.
And the funny thing is, they lead Major League Baseball in home runs this year at 132. And they only have one guy over, I believe, 12 or 15. So it's been a massive team effort over there. John?
Yeah.
Another thing that reminds me of the 2015 season, in addition to the Mets' success, is the fact that the 3 best teams in the National League are all in the same division. If you recall back then, it was the Cardinals, the Cubs, and the Pirates all won over 95 games, and you had the Pirates knocked out in the wild card game, and only the Cubs made it through to the NLCS, where the Mets demolished them. That from the Daniel Murphy hot streak. We're looking probably at something similar this year, where because of how the seeds are set up, where only one team will advance past the division round out of those 3. Yeah. So, there's still a lot of season left for who will come out on top. Now, the Brewers actually are half a game better than the Padres right now. So 3 of the 4 best teams.
But 4 games in front of the NL Central now.
Right. There are 4 games up in the NL Central, but as far as win percentage, they are a half game ahead of the Padres. But the Giants were completely unexpected, and I'm curious to see if they can keep this up the whole year, or if they're going to fade down the stretch.
So,
I think they will.
Just a question about the 3 best teams. Is that a little warped, though, because they all got to beat up on the Diamondbacks? Are they getting extra wins over, the Diamondbacks versus having to play the Pirates or the Marlins, which are not good teams, but they're better than the Diamondbacks? Not that the Giants, Dodgers, and Padres aren't better, but they're getting those extra wins. It's always hard to tell.
I don't give it to that, because basically you got Baltimore, who's not much better, than Arizona is. Pittsburgh's at the bottom, the Marlins, every division or every league always has that one, frankly, super trash team. So you could make the argument in the AL East. I mean, Baltimore has a 315 win percentage. Granted, Arizona's a 283, but there's only a 2-game difference between those two teams. Yet in the AL East, you only have 2 teams that actually are matching sort of toe for toe with the NL West. So I don't necessarily buy into that one so much, but that's just me.
That's fair.
I think
That's
it happens. It happens every year, and especially every year that there's a team or two with a crazy win total. There, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Where there's a team at the bottom that is just getting slammed by everybody. A few years ago, it was in 2018 when the Red Sox won 108 games, and I think the Baltimore lost 115 the same year. The 98 Yankees, 114 wins. They had the expansion Tampa Bay Devil Rays, Devil Rays at the time, in their division to beat up on. I've one of the anti-Yankee arguments I heard for the 61 home run chase with Roger Maris was that the reason that the Yankees that Mantle and Maris hit so many home runs that year was because you had 2 expansion teams. Mm-hmm. So that argument has been around forever.
But see, also, if you want to take it to 1998, if memory serves, I was going to say St. Louis and the Cubs were not in a playoff position. So right. There's less riding on it necessarily.
Well, the Cubs actually did make the wild card that year.
They did. Okay, my bad on that one.
Yeah, they tied.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. Correct.
Wild card, won the 1-game playoff. The Cardinals were a few games behind them and weren't.
Yeah, the Cardinals were out pretty. Basically, I think by August of that year. But they had the games nationally televised, which is kind of a unique event for its time. On like a Tuesday night. Yeah. By the way, can you give me 10 points? Which former Met was the one that gave up home run number 62?
Steve Traxel.
Steve Traxel, the guy who would literally take 1 minute between pitches. And once at a Mets game, I heard the entire crowd chanting in unison to their own player, "Pitch the ball." In unison, they were chanting "Pitch the ball" because Traxel was taking so long between pitches.
The nickname for Traxel was the human rain delay because he took so long.
Oh, dear God. I mean, talk about slowing the game down. I've talked about that one in the past, But you know what? Otherwise, a decent career. So, all right. We are 30 minutes into this. We'll do another 5 minutes. I think we'll do another 5 minutes, and then we'll go on to the obscure sport and then figure everything out from there. I did want to touch on the AL East a little bit. Boston is running away with it. I know at the beginning of the year, we talked about this being a neck-and-neck race between Atlanta. I'm sorry, not Atlanta. Boy. No sleep today, sorry. The Yankees specifically, and also Tampa. But props to the Red Sox. They are running away with that division. And no props to the Yankees for the fact that they are flailing badly in what is a win now year, because eventually that Stanton contract and all the rest of the contracts are going to come due.
Yeah. I just want to talk about Vlad Guerrero Jr. No.
Yeah.
But just another example of a great player we're not going to see in the playoffs. The Red Sox, I still can't figure out why they're so good, but they're winning baseball games, and that's all you got to do is just keep putting them together. Mm-hmm. Yankees had a nice little run about halfway through the season, so a quarter way through the season. I was seeing all sorts of memes. The Metcalf meme was going on with the Yankees on the Metcalf, and it just stopped.
They took
those contracts may come back to bite them, or they might decide to be the Yankees again. And George, the ghost of George will come around, and they'll start paying guys, whoever they have to pay.
Whatever's got to be done. Well, we'll see what happens. I don't see Hank or Hal Steinbrenner being the same cut from the same cloth as his father.
He's not, right?
He isn't.
Yeah, it's business first.
He also admitted there was an interview he did with a quote that I saw where he was asked about Aaron Boone's job status, and Hal basically said he wasn't his father, and wasn't planning on changing managers all the time, because he said most of the time it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until he actually stuck with Torrey at the end, where the Yankees had sustained success for more than a few years.
And Torrey nearly got fired about 12 times.
Yeah, and also, I was not aware that Aaron Boone is in a lame duck contract here. So I definitely see them going the same route as they did with Girardi, where they're just not going to renew his contract. They're not going to fire him midseason. But it's another way for Hal to say, "See, I didn't actually fire him," just like he did with Girardi.
But it's slow. It's a slower burn in this particular case.
Yes.
But unfortunately, he's in a lot of hot water right now because of how the team is performing. Granted, they did go 4-2 in the last 6 on the West Coast road trip, even with that meltdown loss that they gave up 6 runs in the bottom of the 9th. 3-run shot to Altuve, by the way, who now is not wearing a shirt when basically he does the walk-off. If you guys remember after the ALCS, when he gave up the home run, he said he had a really bad tattoo. Do not rip off his shirt. There was a little tiny one here. I don't know if you guys happened to see it. It was a very, very, very tiny one that was, frankly, very difficult to notice. So my question is, was that the one that he was talking about by being really shy? Or maybe was there a buzzer underneath, which some have argued that there was?
I've come to the conclusion that pretty much everybody playing baseball is either cheating or trying to cheat.
That's fair. I don't disagree.
I'm going to go with that answer as well. I'll tell you what. I just don't know with as particular. I believe there's a lot of cheating in baseball. I don't know if I believe that someone would let you put a wire from somewhere to somewhere and put it on your chest when you have to swing a bat. And these guys are so particular about all the little nuances in what they do. The bad tattoo. It turns out there's a tattoo there. People have bad tattoos. They eventually go, well, it's never going away, and they get used to it. Like literally, know people who've done that. Oh no, you can't see. I got this horrible tattoo. Then next thing you know, like a year or two later, you're like, was that the horrible tattoo? Yeah, it was the horrible. So I've seen that in real life. I'm not going to try to guess though.
Yeah,
on what it was. They're 54-35 playing 600 ball though, with everybody's eyes on them. So.
Everybody's villain. So
yeah.
All right, so we're going to wrap up baseball. Went a little longer than expected, but that's okay. It usually happens here. Find us always on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and also on Facebook and Instagram at Spanglish World Sports Den. It is time now for the obscure sport. So if we can pull that up, we had a little bit of a technical issue, which may still be existing. Budget. All right, why not? So basically we have the rolling hills of Germany. And if we can play that. Well, right now we have the rolling hills of Germany. It seems to be pretty staccato a little bit. But have you ever basically decided to look at mountains and say, you know what I want to do? I want to ride a unicycle down it. So here we have extreme unicycle mountain riding. This is apparently fairly popular in Germany, Australia, and Canada as well. Video games credit from Adidas Outdoor. But we are going to break this down as far as oddity obscurity, stupidity, playability, watchability, and of course, badassery. Yeah, I guess we can probably stop at this point. It's not playing the way I wanted it to. But it's a nice little area of Germany over there. It's the obscure sport, like I said, of the week. In this case, extreme unicycle mountain riding. John, if you want, I will start with you if you're cool with it. Give me your thoughts, sir.
Oddity, I would give this a B. Because with unicycling, and it's unicycling in a difficult place, but it's so odd, but it's not it's taking something that's an existing sport, if you can call unicycling a sport, and just putting it in a weird location. Stupidity, I would give it an A- because in order to do something on jagged rocks in the mountains that high up, I think you need to be at least, if not stupid, at least have some screws loose. Playability a D. No way. For trying to ride a unicycle on flat land is hard enough, let alone trying to do it in the mountains. Watchability, probably a C-, because it's interesting for about a minute. I can never do it, but it's cool. But it doesn't really seem all that entertaining to me to watch. I will give it a B+ in badassery though, because of the skill.
Only a B+. Okay.
Something like that.
All right. Usually I go last, but I'm not going to do that in this case. Oddity, I'm going to give it a B-. I think it's unique, but somebody somewhere, easily would have decided, mountain biking down, a mountain is not completely unheard of. So the next level of progression would have to actually end up being a unicycle. Stupidity. Stupidity is in the foot of the beholder, I think, in this particular case. So I'm going to give it a B, just a B- as well, I think. It's stupid for the average person, but for those of you that are into it, it's probably the coolest friggin' thing you have ever done. Playability, this is an F. You are talking to someone, and I am okay admitting what I'm going to say. You know what they say, that basically you never forget how to ride a bicycle? In my life, I have forgotten how to ride a bicycle twice, and I had to relearn twice. So for me, playability on a two-wheeled vehicle is tough enough, let alone a one-wheeled vehicle. So as a result, for playability, if I can go lower than an F, I would do it. As far as watchability goes, honestly, it's pretty cool to see them be able to do this, to be able to see them be able to manage as well as they do for the most part is really cool. I give that probably an A-. Badassery, I give that thing an A+ and beyond, because boy, have you got to have some guts to be able to do that. Because when it comes to guts, you may be spilling them down the mountain if you're not careful. So I give them a lot of credit on that. Obie?
All right, extreme unicycle. I'm going to give it a B. I, to this day, still think unicycles are just weird and bizarre.
Have you seen the motorized ones, though?
Whatever the types they are, they're just a weird thing to me. They strike me as a bizarre contraption because they're not as efficient as a bicycle. They're a bizarre thing to me. So oddity is a B, just because of the whole unicycle thing. Obscurity. This gets a C, and here's why. When we first got involved in this whole obscure sports, the one sport I came up with that I was going to suggest, but feels like decades ago, was extreme unicycling. So it only gets a C because I kind of been there, and I know you're trying to move to stupidity, but I stick with obscurity. I'm going to get away from it. I promise.
All right. If you want, I'll tell you what, right here and now, I'm going to change that one to obscurity, so I never bring up stupidity again. There, done.
Playability and enjoyability. Now, as odd as I think a unicycle is, I think if you can ride a unicycle, this is the next obvious step for what you want to do. Just like I ride a bike, and I want to get into mountain biking. So I gave it a B, because I think if you can learn to ride a unicycle, then you can learn to do this and do it. Watchability. I've seen a few videos of it because I told you, like I said, it was a sport, but they never race. Mm-hmm. So it loses its watchability instantly. If this was a bunch of guys racing down this hill on a one-wheeled vehicle, falling down, hurting each other. But it's not. I know we once talked about potentiality. I'd give this an A, but right now it's only a B. A D, I mean, for watchability. But badassery, just like all you guys. They're riding unicycles in dangerous terrain. Of course they're badasses. I'm giving it a solid B.
Yeah. All right.
Racing would definitely increase the watchability.
Obie, where does this place in as far as your whatever? You have so many categories at this point.
So here's my categories, and it doesn't fit in any of them. It's not a festival. It's not a martial arts. It's not something where you score the ball. It's European, so it's not non-American European, because a lot of times they're obscure just because they're Asian or Australian or African, and we don't see them all the time. It's not a race. It's not pain for pain's sake. We had a few volleyball games. It's not any of those. There's no dead animals, and it's not part of the regional Olympics. So those are my groups, and it doesn't make it into any of my groupings.
Huh. So basically, it's a category unto itself. So it is the best of its own category.
You know what? It's number one in extreme sports. It's better than extreme ironing.
Oh, yeah. That's just bizarre. Also involves a mountain. All right. So we got about almost 15 minutes left. Obie, I know you wanted to talk about the Tour de France, so I want to defer right over to you, sir. Take it away.
So, I mean, I've been thoroughly enjoying this year's race. There's a lot of going on. For anyone who doesn't watch the Tour de France, it is a single sports season in a single event. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other bike riding that goes on throughout the rest of the year, but it is its own single microcosm of a season because there's all different races that happen. The highlight this year was for those people who like racing, bike racing, was Mark Cavendish coming back. This guy was looking to become the all-time winner in stages in the Tour de France. Between 2010 and 2016, he won 30 stages, with the all-time record of stage victories being 34. In like Tiger-esque, it was like a foregone conclusion he was going to set the record, and then an accident this race, an accident that race, some medical issues, and then everybody sort of outpaced him, and he got too old and couldn't make a team, and the guy was literally about to retire from cycling last summer. And one of his old team captains said, "Sure, we'll pay you the minimum. Come on board." And the number one sprinter for his team got hurt, or maybe he wasn't hurt. There were some other controversies around it, but that's for people who are really into cycling to figure out. And Mark Cavendish got to go to the race, and he promptly has won every flat-out sprint there's been in spectacular fashion, and has now tied Eddie Merckx for the most stage wins in the Tour de France. And just so you know, to put that into perspective for Americans, even if Lance Armstrong hadn't been stripped of everything, he was nowhere close to Eddie Merckx. This guy was all. This is a clean record if you even include everything that's been stripped away in the history books. And he's got two more opportunities over the next week to surpass the guy. And this is like if Tiger Woods comes back and catches Jack. It's that it would be that impressive of a return to form. And then the guy winning is this young kid. He's under 24. And this is, again, probably something for cycle fans who are even deeper than I am. If the guy who's winning now, who has other than an accident, an insurmountable lead, wins, or the guy who's in third jumps up and beats him, which based on the fact that there's a time trial, he really seems to be the only guy who stands a chance of making a big move, will mark the third year in a row that somebody under 24 has won. There's a prize for being the best placed rider under 24, and this prize started in 1975, and until 3 years ago, it's happened 3 times, where the winner on the day that the race ended, because there was one time a stripped race because they like to do that in this sport, ended up being the youngest rider, and now it's happened 3 times in a row. And in one of the other big races, it's only happened twice since 1975, and now it's happened twice in a row. So there may be something happening in cycling. Again, for the real big cycle fans, maybe they can delve into why this is happening. But the young riders are winning. But the overall race itself is losing interest this year because it's just not very competitive.
It also seems to be like a changing of the guard, a new generation coming up. You had the ones who had all of from the late 90s and 2000s. It wasn't just Lance; it was the entire sport was doping. So you have a lot of those guys working their way out. So now it's a fresh group coming up. So for a sport that has had all of the ups and downs, all of the controversies, all of the doping scandals, and all that cycling has, new up and comers is definitely good. Another note for the Tour de France was yesterday. Sepp Kuss, was the first American to win a stage since Tyler Farrar in 2011.
Yes, that was an exciting stage too. He had a great attack on one of the late hills and took a 30-second lead going up and held it off coming down against the oldest man in the race, but one of the most experienced and best descenders. But Sepp held him off, and it was excellent. There's lots of talk that Sepp can be a GC contender. I think that's a lot of hope for Americans based on what I see looking at some of the other guys. But we can keep our fingers crossed and hope he gets bought out by another team and is expected to perform at the top levels for him. The last American to win a major tour did it when he was 43, and that was Christian Horner not too long ago. But back to John's point, I think that's a major point in why this is happening. I do wonder if the sport has cleaned itself up to such a point where now youth, the strength of youth, is overpowering the endurance of age, because your youth strength peaks earlier than your endurance does, and then you're cheating on your endurance and on top of it by taking the performing enhancing drugs that were used in bike racing. Because look, this guy Eddie Merck, I wasn't around in the 70s, but I do know what the San Diego Chargers were doing in the 70s. There's no reason to believe they weren't cheating in bike racing either in the 70s. Just it wasn't what the thing was that we got caught up with and cared about. So I do wonder if this youth movement is because of cleaner sports.
I'm going to take 60 seconds just to get your thoughts here. If Lance Armstrong never was in the sport, would the U.S. care at all about Tour de France? Either one of you?
No.
Yes.
My answer is no also.
I don't think they care as much, but Lance Armstrong had a wonderful springboard from Greg LeMond. Mm-hmm. So there was, in our high school, there was 4 or 5 guys, including myself, who were already watching it pre-Lance. Okay. Not a lot. It would not be as big as it is here in America. It may not have been something that would be on NSNBC. It may have been only on True TV at this point, but I do think there would have been some amount of following. Now, obviously, Lance made it a huge thing here in the U.S. And went and marketed and did amazing things for cancer and created a whole fashion trend with the stupid rubber bracelets, So I think there'd still be some following in the U.S., but smaller, yes.
Okay.
Lance has such a complicated legacy where, despite the cheating and, and having all of his accomplishments essentially wiped away, to raise awareness and millions for cancer that he has, it's very complicated. Where, despite the fact that he cheated to get it, it still helped a lot of people. So that is, and I don't know if anybody else watched the 30 for 30 of his from last year, but that was fascinating as well. That got into more of the reasons behind it. But I think without Lance, because even although it was before my time, like Greg LeMond did increase interest a little bit, but it didn't break the mainstream the way that Lance did. The way that Lance transcended the sport. There's very few people who come around that do that. Tiger transcended golf the same way. Where it just increased interest, where to the point where where everybody was trying to pick up a golf club, everybody was trying to get on a bicycle because of Lance, and that has faded because of the cheating scandals. But it's still there. And also now you have every hipster in Brooklyn riding bicycles too. So that also helps it.
So I don't want this to be a situation where I think we're talking past each other. I think we're kind of in agreement. I think that the sport was on a trajectory with Greg. Lance brought it up higher, and the debacle did not fall off to a point that Greg would have gotten it to. But I still think it was on an upward trajectory. I think that's a fair way of saying it.
So in some way, if it wasn't going to be him, it would have been somebody else. Just nature being what it is. In some way, yeah.
Yeah, I have a paper it would have. It's like, I don't know if you can see it. Like, it would have gone up steadily. Instead, it went up and it dipped, but still higher than it would have gotten. So he helped, and it didn't fall all the way down. Would be my answer to the question, because, like John said, he transcended the sport. I mean, come on, he was in dodgeball.
I know. Boy, did he mainstream on that one when you're in a frat pack movie.
Yeah, one of the worst age scenes of all time.
Boy, you see that on TV now. You're like, well, okay. It's weird. That movie's like 17 years old now.
That movie's so old. He was retired when he did the scene, and since then rose even higher, and then fell off. And now that scene's. I mean, yeah, it's so old. It's
weird because 3 or 4 weeks ago, whatever it was, Ben Stiller was pissed at me and chewing me out for something, and it's like, dude. You were Purple Cobra almost 2 decades ago. But
in the montage, in the title montage for the Ocho in Dodgeball, because I actually rewatched the movie recently as well. While they're doing the intro for the Ocho, in the Ocho montage is that Fireball soccer that we watched.
We covered that. Well, never covered that. It was us.
Yeah, it was just you and me, Scott. But I noticed that clip. I said, "Oh my God, we were just watching that."
Nice. I didn't even know that. But yeah, Dodgeball is still a classic, even though, like I said, the Lance Armstrong thing, like you said, did not age well. But there's so many White Goodman one-liners in that movie that it becomes its own classic. Anyway, I got it on DVD. You remember what DVDs were? But all right, so. We got about 3 minutes.
NBA Finals mention.
I was going to say, I'm going to try and sneak that in right now. We got about 3 minutes left at this point. NBA Finals right now, Suns are up 2-1. Do you see Milwaukee pulling it out, or do you see the Suns taking it? I say Suns in 6.
Right now, I don't see anyone not winning at home, so I'm going to go Suns in 7.
Okay. Johnny?
I'm thinking Suns in 6. I do think that Milwaukee wins Game 4. I mean, Giannis is having the kind of finals series that only, for players that have scored 40 points in consecutive NBA Finals games, there are 6. And Giannis is one of them. The other 5 are all-time greats in the Hall of Fame. LeBron, Shaq, Jordan did 4. He scored 4 times over 40 points in the NBA Finals. Rick Barry and Jerry West. That's the kind of rarefied air performance from, no pun intended there with the Jordan comparison, but that's the territory that Giannis is in. If somebody else on the Bucks can actually step up, then maybe that could change the series a little bit. But otherwise, I think Phoenix does eventually take the series.
Yeah, I think, and this is why I went with the home court. I don't see anyone on the Bucks, anyone, including Drew and Middleton, picking it up enough in Phoenix. And I'll be honest, I believe that Giannis will have other chances. I don't see CP3's body surviving into the finals ever again. It hadn't until now. So I'd like to see CP3 get it and make for a good State Farm commercial, I'm sure.
Well, we'll probably get something out of that no matter what happens in the finals. But we got to wrap this up. We got less than a minute at this point. Find us always on Twitter at SSW Sports Den. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Spanglish World Sports Den. For myself, Mr. Obie Spencer, and Mr. JD Walker, digging the name there, by the way. This is the Sports Den. Find us on Zingo TV, YouTube, Twitch. Find us basically anywhere. We're the only Spanglish World Sports Den out there, so it's easy to find us. For me, I'm Scott Churchson. Thanks as always. Have a great night and be awesome.